I'm the Superstation of Future Radio. Hey, I'm your host, Brother Michael Imhotep. It is Sunday, April 14th, 2019, and we are live. We have a lot to talk about tonight on the African History Network show. Hope everybody's doing well. It's been a very, very crazy week, and many people are anticipating possibly on Tuesday the Mueller report being released. We know some of it will probably be redacted. It's almost 400 pages, not including appendices. So there's been a lot of talk about that. All right, so on tonight's show, we're going to talk about a number of different topics. We'll talk some more about Nipsey Hussle. We know that Nipsey Hussle was honored by Congresswoman Representative Karen Bass of California on Wednesday, April 10th, 2019. He was honored in Congress in the House of Representatives as a humble visionary for his community work and his career, his entrepreneurship. We know that the next day, Thursday, April 11th, thousands of people came out to celebrate his life at the Staples Center in Los Angeles. It was a star-studded event as well. It was televised on BET, so tens of thousands of people across the country watched it. It was also streamed live on social media. We shared the BET broadcast on our Facebook fan page, the African History Network, also. So we'll talk some more about Nipsey Hussle, and I'll share with you what Congresswoman Representative Karen Bass, who is the chair of the Congressional Black Caucus, what she had to say about Nipsey Hussle. So his legacy is recorded in the history of the House of Representatives. Okay, she submitted that to the record for the House of Representatives. Now, also on Thursday, April 11th. Now, some of you have seen the Facebook Live broadcast that I did this week. I did a number of them and a few last week to deal with some topics I don't have time to deal with on the 2-hour show here and go more in depth into some of the topics that I do go into. So I did one broadcast on Wednesday dealing with Georgetown University students. We're going to take a vote to create a Slavery Reparations Fund. They were going to impose a fee of $27.20 on undergraduate students, all undergraduate students at Georgetown University. And this is to create a fund to assist the descendants of the 272 enslaved Africans that the Jesuit priests who ran Georgetown University sold in 1838. And at the time, it was Georgetown College. Georgetown College was in financial despair, and they were sold for $115,000, 272 enslaved Africans sold for $115,000. In today's dollars, that's $3.3 million. And the sale of those enslaved Africans saved Georgetown. Okay, so the story came out back in 2016 from the New York Times. It was a big 12-page article dealing with this. I talked about it here on the African History Network show and when I was doing the morning show here as well. So a vote was taken on Thursday by undergraduate students. It was an online vote, and they decided to impose this fee. Now, it is not binding, and we're going to get deep into this and explore this as well. This takes place at the same time that a larger discussion about reparations for the descendants of enslaved Africans in this country is continues. Now, it didn't just start this year, people. I know that, like, if you go watch my broadcast I did. It's on our YouTube channel, Michael Imhotep, IMHOTEP, our Facebook fan page, the African History Network, as well. On Facebook, click on videos, and you know, I deal with some of the history behind reparations, and also a lot of people have not read this article here from the cover story from the Atlantic magazine from. This is from 2014, June 2014. It was an award-winning expose done by Ta-Nehisi Coates called the case for reparations, And this brother did his research on this, okay? So a lot of people who are just getting into the reparations movement don't understand the history behind this. And contrary to popular belief, reparations did come up in the 2016 election. I've dealt with articles, and I talked about it when I was doing my national radio show, nationally syndicated radio show, the Michael Imhotep Show on the Empowerment Radio Network. I dealt with that when it took place. Bernie Sanders as well as Hillary Clinton talked about how they were against reparations and what they were for, etc. So there are numerous articles written about this. This is well documented. Okay, so we'll talk some about that as well. Georgetown University, the students voting to create a fund to benefit the descendants of the 272 enslaved Africans. Now, also, H.R. 40, House Resolution 40, was reintroduced January 13, 2019 by Representative Sheila Jackson Lee of Texas, okay? And this builds upon the H.R. 40 bill that Congressman John Conyers introduced back in 1989 of the 13th Congressional District here in Detroit. So H.R. 40 Reparations Bill gains momentum in Congress and among Democratic 2020 hopefuls. We know last weekend and the previous week at the National Action Network that Reverend Al Sharpton holds, the National Action Network Conference he holds each year. We know a lot of 2020 Democratic hopefuls were there, and they were all asked a series of questions, and one of them dealt with where do they stand on reparations, do they support H.R. 40. So we'll talk some about that, because last week we dealt with reparations, but I did not get a chance to get to the articles I had dealing with H.R. 40, okay, because we got so many questions, which is fine. Go watch last week's show, because I went back into some of the history, and I dealt also with a legal argument, two legal arguments for reparations as opposed to emotional arguments for reparations. And the first thing people have to do is read the U.S. Constitution. That's the first thing people have to do, is read the U.S. Constitution, because that's the foundation of law in this country, all right? And especially read Article 1, Section 9, which ties into why the transatlantic slave trade, the international slave trade, was outlawed January 1st, 1808, because it was stipulated in Article 1, Section 9 of the U.S. Constitution. But unfortunately, a lot of our people don't understand history, don't understand law, okay? So we'll talk about that as well. And then we also know that Cory Booker, Senator Cory Booker of New Jersey, on Tuesday introduced a Senate bill to study reparations and to study the impact of slavery on African Americans and to determine how reparations should be rendered as well, okay? So you have a bill in the House of Representatives, you have a bill in the U.S. Senate as well. Now, last week I only got a few minutes to deal with the topic of how American schools can't figure out how to teach children the history of slavery, with recent instances of mock slave auctions and a monopoly-like role-playing game. Okay, so there have been a number of stories about this. There was just another one this past week about a teacher who told students that they would help them research slave games that children played when they were enslaved, things like this, right? So I've talked about this some last year. February 1st, 2018, an article came out from theatlantic.com that dealt with how the history of slavery is being incorrectly taught in schools, okay? And it dealt with a 52-page study from the Southern Poverty Law Center, 52-page study from the Southern Poverty Law Center called Teaching Hard History, American Slavery. Teaching Hard History, American Slavery, all right? And I've talked about this in some of my lectures, Facebook Live broadcasts, YouTube broadcasts, the online courses I teach also. So with this study, what it documents how the history of slavery is being improperly taught in our schools, okay? It deals with how the history of slavery is being improperly taught in our schools. It teaches you, and it explains to teachers why they should not use mock slave auctions, reenactments of slavery, things like this as a teaching tool, because it traumatizes students, especially African American students, okay? So you can download this from splcenter.org, Southern Poverty Law Center, splcenter.org. It was put together by, it was a committee of historians, including Dr. Hakeem Jeffries from Ohio State University, who is one of the nephews of Dr. Leonard Jeffries. So it's a fantastic, fantastic study. Okay, so we'll deal with that also, how the history of slavery is being improperly taught in our schools. And this has wide-ranging, long-lasting negative impact. So the fight that African Americans have today to get some type of repair, some type of compensation for 246 years of slavery, decades of Jim Crow segregation, redlining coming from government policies like the Homeowners Loan Corporation, created in 1933 under the New Deal, which created the whole redlining process. The Federal Housing Administration in 1934, the GI Bill in 1944, the Social Security Administration in 1935, Minimum Wage Act in 1935. All these things that were created by the government, all these policies, all these agencies that discriminate against African Americans. And what you have during 1619 to 1865, 246 years of slavery, is you have a maldistribution of scarce wealth, power, and resources into the hands of the dominant white society, a maldistribution of scarce wealth, power, and resources. And then when we look at Special Field Order number 15, issued January 16, 1865 by General William T. Sherman, and contrary to popular belief, it's ostensibly called 40 acres and a mule. Okay, this is a Special Field Order number 15. It did not apply to all formerly enslaved Africans. There were 4 million freed because of the 13th Amendment. It did not apply to all of them. And contrary to popular belief, contrary to the documentary 13th, the 13th Amendment didn't just re-enslave all 4 million. No. When you study the convict leasing system, it was only somewhere about 20,000 people in the convict leasing system, including white people. So that's just some more myths, like the Willie Lynch letter 1712. Willie Lynch never historically existed, and the 13th Amendment just automatically re-enslaving all 4 million freed African Americans. That's a myth also. Okay. Follow historian Darrell Scott on his Facebook page. He's a historian, and he teaches at Howard University. He's also, if I remember correctly, a past president of ASALH, Association for the Study of African American Life and History, which is the organization that Dr. Carter G. Woodson co-founded September 9th, 1915. Used to be called the Association for the Study of Negro Life and History. All right. So we'll deal with these topics tonight. And then also this past week, we saw that Congress, the Democrats in Congress, held hearings on the rise of hate crimes and white nationalism in the Trump administration, in the Trump era, right? And we saw little Candace Owens of Turning Point USA. You know little Candace, she always looks like she needs her hair done. You know, the African-American woman that's always defending white supremacy. That Candace Owens, yeah. The one that is afraid to debate Roland Martin on his show, or any other show for that matter. The one who got her clock cleaned by Dr. Michael Eric Dyson on Ari Melba's show, The Beat, on MSNBC. Go watch that video. We'll post it on our Facebook fan page, the African History Network. She totally got her clock clean, right? She's the new black face of, or the new face of young black conservatives for some of them, okay? So Candace Owens testified also, and she told 5 lies. News1.com documented this. 5 times Candace Owens lied to Congress while testifying about white nationalism. It was just, you know, if you respect yourself, you just sat there and looked at her and said, you know, I hope you're getting paid enough money, a lot of money, not enough, but I hope you're getting paid a lot of money to sell your people out, because you can't be this stupid for free. So you have to be getting paid to sell your people out like this. So we'll talk some about that in that hearing that took place. And then remember the Waco biker shooting of 2015 when 9 people were killed and over 20 injured? Well, you won't believe what happened with that, because nobody's going to be prosecuted. Imagine that. Nobody's going to be prosecuted. 9:10 a.m. the Superstation, the Future Radio, the African History Network show. I'm Michael Imhotep. 313-778-7600. 313-778-7600. We'll be back in a few minutes. All right, stand by, guys. We'll be back in 2 minutes, 2.5 minutes. First segment's already down. This show goes by quickly. There's a lot of content, okay? How's everybody doing? Share this broadcast on your Facebook page. Invite your friends to tune in also. We'll post the information for tonight's show here as well. Let's see here what we have. Okay, you got the clips, right?
Yes, sir.
All right. All right, and then everybody, you can donate to the African History Network as well. PayPal.me/the AHN show. PayPal.me/the AHN show. This helps us to keep doing the research, stay on the air, pay the bills, etc., finance the show. Okay, we'll be back in, let's see. Now, did I share this already on my personal page? All right, so when we come back, we're going to we'll deal with Nipsey Hussle. And so we're going to go to clip one. You got clip one? Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, LA Congresswoman, because we're going to go to that story. All right, so who do we have here? We've got, let's see. All right, guys, we'll be back in a couple of minutes here. So when we come back, we'll deal with Representative Karen Bass, who honored Nipsey Hussle. Honored Nipsey Hussle in Congress, okay, on Wednesday, the day before his memorial service. All right, 313-778-7600 is the call-in number if you have a question or comment. Welcome back to the African History Network show right here on 910 AM, the Superstation of Future Radio. Hey, I'm your host, Brother Michael Imhotep. It's Sunday, April 14th, 2019. We have a lot to talk about. Call-in number is 313-778-7600, 313-778-7600. And very quickly, I want to let you know, coming up at Wayne County Community College District and Northwest Campus on Tuesday, April 16th, 2019, 10 a.m. to 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. They are having Career Fair 2019. Career Fair 2019. This is at the Denise Wellens Glover Welcome Center, 8200 West Outer Drive in Detroit, Michigan, 8200 West Outer Drive in Detroit, Michigan. Bring multiple copies of resumes, meet with representatives, and explore available employment opportunities. Dress for success as well. Free and secure parking available. Business attire preferred. Open to the public at no cost. For more information, visit wccd.edu, wccc.edu, or call 313-496-2775, 313-496-2775. That is Career Fair 2019, Tuesday, April 16th, 2019, 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. at the Northwest Campus of Wayne County Community College District. I'm going to roll through there also for a little bit as well. Okay, so this past Wednesday, you know, this is a very, very busy week. A lot of news stories breaking. But this past Wednesday, in the House of Congress, we saw that LA Congresswoman, Representative Karen Bass, entered Nipsey Hussle into the congressional record and preserved his legacy in the congressional record for his community work and his entrepreneurship as well, and him uplifting his community, okay? So we know Nipsey Hussle was shot and killed Sunday, March 31st, 2019, inside the Slauson Avenue shopping plaza that he bought in February of 2019 outside of his Marathon clothing store that he established in 2017 to reinvest in that area. And he was only 33 years old. Now, Representative Karen Bass is a Democrat whose district encompasses. So she's at the 37th. Her district is the 37th congressional district. Her district encompasses several neighborhoods southwest of downtown Los Angeles, including the Hyde Park neighborhood, where Nipsey Hussle, whose real name was Ermias Ascadon, where he was born, raised, and killed. Now, in celebrating him on the House floor, the House of Representatives floor, Karen Bass described the Grammy-nominated artist as a, quote, humble visionary, end quote, who saw the overlooked and welcomed the dismissed. Saw the overlooked and welcomed the dismissed. So this was the day before we saw the celebration of his life that took place at the Staples Center in Los Angeles on Thursday. Okay, let's go to this clip of Representative Karen Bass on the floor in the House of Representatives.
From California, seek recognition.
Ask unanimous consent to address the House.
Gentlewoman is recognized for 1 minute without objection.
Mr. Speaker, I rise today on the floor of the House of Representatives to formally recognize and honor the legacy of Ermias Ascadon, known to his community and the neighborhoods of South Los Angeles and beyond as Nipsey Hussle, As noted in the record I will be submitting shortly, Nipsey Hussle used the platform he created with his music to lift our community as he climbed. His business ventures, his investments, his philanthropy, his community engagement, every step of the way, he had a sole purpose of bettering the community he came from. A humble visionary, he saw the overlooked and welcomed the dismissed. He reminded our community that the power we hold is the power of where we come from, and that awareness of that power can never be taken from us. He will be remembered by South Los Angeles as a protector, an inspirator, as a father, a brother, and an unabashed son of South Los Angeles. For all he was given, he gave back, and for that legacy, South Los Angeles has been changed forever. I will now be submitting this record honoring his legacy. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Now yield back.
Okay, so that is that's the video of what she did, part of what she did on Wednesday. Check out the article from KTLA Channel 5 in Los Angeles, and they have a write-up on this. LA Congresswoman honors Nipsey Hussle on House floor as humble visionary who saw the overlooked and welcomed the dismissed. Saw the overlooked and welcomed the dismissed. This is from Wednesday, April 10, 2019, KTLA Channel 5, KTLA.com, Channel 5, local news affiliate there in Los Angeles. Okay, so in the text, so in the video, she held up a frame of the actual text that she was entering into the congressional record. In the text, the Congresswoman entered into government records. She recounts how the rapper educated his community about their economic power. Nipsey Hussle often touted that he owned his master recordings and used the money to reinvest in music and community. He also gave jobs to people in the neighborhood who were homeless and formerly incarcerated, rebuilt basketball courts at his one-time campus, one-time elementary school, 59th Street Elementary School, and once gave every student there a new pair of shoes. He was also behind Vector 90, a STEM center and co-working a space for youth, among numerous other projects. So that was founded by David Gross, who's the CEO and founder of Vector 90, and Nipsey Hussle was an investor in that. So if you go to, so in the article, I think it has a link to the actual article from KTLA Channel 5. It has a link to Karen Bass' website, her page on house.gov. House.gov is the official website of the House of Representatives. Every member of the House of Representatives has their own page there at house.gov, so you can go to your member of the House of Representatives website, see what they're doing, see which bills they are sponsoring or have written, see which committees they're on, etc. And they have press releases. They have the media interviews oftentimes, but they have the press releases there as well. So this is from bass.house.gov, bass, B-A-S-S, bass.house.gov, which is Representative Karen Bass' page at house.gov. Congressional record text honoring Nipsey Hussle. Congressional record text honoring Nipsey Hussle, April 10, 2019. Here's what she actually entered into the congressional record. The following language was submitted into the congressional record by Representative Karen Bass, honoring the legacy of Ermias Joseph Ascadam, known also as Nipsey Hussle, and his contributions to South Los Angeles. Madam Speaker, may this entry serve as enduring recognition of the legacy lived and left by Ermias Joseph Ascadam, known to his community and the neighborhoods of South Los Angeles and beyond as Nipsey Hussle. Nipsey Hussle was born in the Hyde Park neighborhood of South Los Angeles in 1985. His father was the only member of his own family in Eritrea to move to the United States. We know Eritrea is right next to Ethiopia, is bordered by Ethiopia and Sudan. It used to be part of Ethiopia, actually, where he met Nipsey Hussle's mother. Nipsey Hussle's mother is African American. As a teen, Nipsey attended Alexander Hamilton High School, as did I. Karen Bass attended that high school as well, as did many in South Los Angeles. He went on to pursue a music career that would touch millions, culminating in national recognition for his studio album Victory Lap. okay, which came out in 2018. He was nominated for a Grammy for it as well. An innovator, entrepreneur, and community investor, Nipsey Hussle used the platform he created with his music to further demonstrate not only his business savvy, but his love and pride for where he came from, in addition to showing the importance of community ownership and reinvestment. In the same way he went from selling mixtapes on the corner of Crenshaw and Slauson to owning the masters of his Grammy-nominated album, Nipsey Hussle went from trademarking his clothing line to owning the stores selling his trademarked clothing line, to owning the shopping plaza where the store selling his clothing line was located. Marathon Clothing, which was his clothing store, is a technologically groundbreaking store that could have been opened anywhere. Nipsey Hussle opened it on Slauson and Crenshaw. South Los Angeles was where he invested, opening a barbershop and 2 restaurants in that same intersection, reopening the World on Wheels skating rink in Mid-City, and partnering with Vector 90, one of the first workspaces and incubators in South LA designed to support Black and brown entrepreneurship locally. He also worked with the Los Angeles City Council on Destination Crenshaw, a project to be built for, by, and in honor of our community in celebration of the historical and contemporary contributions of Black LA, Los Angeles, and the Crenshaw community. Throughout his projects, Nipsey Hussle brought the neighborhood with him, in working to ensure that the community was knowledgeable about their economic power. Nipsey Hussle made sure to give jobs to residents in the neighborhood who were struggling, some of which were homeless and formerly incarcerated, okay? Also former gang members as well. There was an article from abcnews.go.com that talked about Nipsey Hussle being honored in the halls of Congress, and it had a video there, and it talked about how he employed former gang members who wanted to get out of the gang life. And there was one brother who was interviewed who said, you know, our children would see us go gang bang and get involved in, you know, activities we shouldn't be involved in, and now they see us getting up, going to work in the morning, okay, because, you know, Nipsey was hiring them as well. Okay, so Nipsey made sure to give jobs to residents in the neighborhood who were struggling, some of which were homeless and formerly incarcerated. He once provided a pair of shoes to every student at 59th Street Elementary School, and also donated to renovate the school's playground and basketball courts. He inspired many others in the entertainment industry to actively invest in South Los Angeles's neighborhoods as well. A humble visionary, Nipsey Hussle initiated peace in a community where experiences of systematic injustices appear in the form of police brutality and gang violence. He saw the overlooked and welcomed the dismissed. He was an activist working to reduce gun violence in the community, hosting demonstrations and symposiums over the years. He was slated to meet with Los Angeles Police Department, with the Los Angeles Police Department about reducing gun violence in the community the day after he was murdered. Okay, that meeting did take place. He taught and reminded our community that the power we hold is the power we come from, and that awareness of our power is something no one can take from us. He taught and reminded our community that the power that we hold is the power we come from, and that awareness of our power is something no one can take from us. Nipsey Hussle will be remembered as a visionary, as a protector, as an inspiration, as a philanthropist, as a father, as a brother, and as an unabashed son of South Los Angeles. For all he was given, he gave back. And for that legacy, South Los Angeles has been changed forever. Okay, so that's what Representative Karen Bass actually entered into the congressional record. All right, we'll post this link. And once again, that's at bass.house.gov, BASS, bass.house.gov. House.gov, once again, is the official website of the House of Representatives. Each member of the House of Representatives has their own page there. Senate.gov is the official website of the U.S. Senate. Each of the 100 members of the U.S. Senate has their own page there as well. So you can check and see what your member of Congress, what your member of the U.S. Senate is doing and has done. Okay, we'll go to the phone lines after that. We'll talk a little bit about the celebration of life that took place Thursday, April 11th at the Staples Center in Los Angeles. Let's go to the phone lines. Let's go to Al, line 1. Al, welcome to the African History Network show. Thanks for holding. Tell us where you're calling from.
I'm calling from Detroit. What's going on, Mike?
Hey, how's it going?
Man, the more I find out about this young man, I really got to say, I don't know. I never listened to it. I'm not going to sit there and say I knew it. But when I heard about what happened, I did some research. And this guy was really in the spill. He was really in them incubators. Like, I don't know if you knew his story was interactive. And you got a young man, I think his name is Idris Sadu.
Yeah, Idris Sandu, yeah, who's Ghanaian, yes.
Yeah, Sandu. Yeah, this guy, man, got turned down MIT twice to work on his own. They said that search engine on Instagram, he created.
Mm-hmm.
They were supposed to be doing some more stuff. And they also was doing a Vector 90 in Atlanta with T.I. I don't know if you got a chance to read that article. So he was going to do these incubators everywhere. But the thing that I want people to press upon this guy is that he believed in his community.
Right.
I know people may not like his rap music, but Mike, this is a guy that people really, we miss a big opportunity about this guy because he really believed in his people. And I'm going to tell you something else. I don't know if you saw the article where he was trying to buy an apartment building because a lot of people were getting pushed out to the little football arena out there in Los Angeles. And he was trying to keep like low income, older people in that area because he didn't want them to be moving away. So
yeah, I heard about that. Yeah, he was working to stop gentrification. He's working to stop gentrification, which we should all be engaged in. So those with the means need to buy up the land.
I'm going to tell you something else you want to get off, Mike. For a guy to be 33 years old, this guy really had his head on his shoulder.
Right.
And we really going to miss a guy like that because a lot of people are not thinking like that.
Exactly.
And I say, Mike, I thank you for as long as you've been on. I made you be on a Power Network back in the day.
Right.
Hey, just keep on pushing this knowledge because the people do need it.
Absolutely.
I do appreciate it.
All right, thanks, Al. And we have to keep in mind that Nipsey Hussle's life was changed when he went to Eritrea for 3 months in 2004 and connected with his father's side of the family. He talked about how it changed his perspective on life. So it was Africa that changed Nipsey Hussle. Okay, let's go to line 2. Let's go to John. John, welcome to the African History Network show. Thanks for holding. Tell us where you're calling from.
Well, thank you, Hotep. I'm calling from the east side of Detroit.
All right.
Hotep, I just want to thank you for educating people. What a great, great story, knowledge, and information and history. That I'm glad you said it's progressive records.
Yes.
Hotep, I want to ask you a question. Maybe it ain't on the same subject about Nipsey, but did you realize that some of these African Americans people home used to when the homestead was going on, some of them did get land when they had the free land. They went out in Colorado, around, and the gentleman that owned the TPS tonight, Joe Madison, some of his relatives, they later owned. She did get a record of homestead land. It's 150 acres. And Joe Madison and his family didn't know anything about it.
What period of time was that? That sounds like the Dawes Allotment Act of 1887. What period?
That's right. During the Lincoln, they gave her 140 acres, a homestead, and she had to stay on for 5 years, and all the people real owners, and she did.
So.
And they got the record show that it was her land.
So the Homestead Act goes back to 1862. Is about 160 acres of land. They had to the head of households were given. It almost overwhelmingly went to white people. The Homestead Act of 1862 is about 245 million acres of land that was given away for about 100 years. The last allotment was given out in 1988. It almost exclusively went to white people. It also went to white immigrants coming to this country.
Yeah, right, that's right.
So
and they can't understand how they one said her birth that she didn't get it. But they show record that she did get the land, If she stayed on for 5 years and just thought it was her land, and if someone still married for family and members and so forth, and he was on TV tonight. So I just want to know, were you familiar with it?
Yeah, the Homestead Act. So the Homestead Act 1862 was one of the massive land giveaways that started during the Civil War, and this helped to redistribute wealth, power, and resources into the hands of Europeans. You also had the Southern Homestead Act of 1866, right after the Civil War ends, which gives away 45 million acres of land in 5 southern states. You have the Dawes Allotment Act of 1887, which redistributes 138 million acres of land. The majority of it was supposed to go to Native Americans and Black Indians, but 2/3 went to white people. And all that was preceded by millions of acres of land that were given away in the 1600s and the 1700s, dealing with the head rights. The head rights, where white people coming to this country could get 50 acres of land and more, and they would get free land, but they would get more land for each enslaved African that they owned as well. Okay, yeah. So we see George Washington getting tens of thousands of acres of land, Thomas Jefferson, Patrick Henry, etc. You're gonna have a small, a very small amount of African Americans who are people of African descent who get. Just 1 second, John. Just 1 second, John. You're gonna have a very small number of people of African descent who get land during head rights, but what's going to happen is going into about the 1660s, 1670s, laws are going to be put in place where they can't leave that land to their survivors, to their family, things like this as well. Okay, go ahead and finish your comment.
Well, I just want to say that they tried to deny it for a long time, but they got a record. They got the record to show, and she was from some part of New Orleans. Mm-hmm. And they couldn't believe that she
how was she classified? So in New Orleans, you have Creole. Now, how was she classified? Was she classified as Negro? Was she part of a Native American tribe, or what?
They said something that she was. They said she was a Creole, and some relatives of Joe Madison family.
Okay, so she may have been part of a Native American tribe. For instance, in Oklahoma, you're going to have a lot of people of African descent who were enslaved by the Choctaw, Chickasaw, Creek, Cherokee, and Seminole Indians. And this ties into the Indian Removal Act of 1830, the 5 civilized tribes of Native Americans being pushed off their land because of the Indian Removal Act of 1830 that President Andrew Jackson signs. Andrew Jackson, who was a white supremacist slave owner, president, who's a hero to Donald John Trump. And these 5 civilized tribes of Native Americans all go out west into Oklahoma. And at this time, Oklahoma is a territory, but not a state in the Union. Oklahoma does not become a state in the Union until 1907. And when the Civil War ends, those Africans that they enslaved are going to be set free. They're going to be made, given full rights into those Native American nations, those tribes, and they're going to be compensated with land as well. They get monetary compensation also. So when you study the history of Tulsa, Oklahoma, and specifically Black Wall Street, what we call Black Wall Street in Tulsa, Oklahoma, which is in North Greenwood, okay, a lot of the early African American landowners in Tulsa got land because of those treaties, because Tulsa, Oklahoma was founded around 1836 by Creek Indians who go into Tulsa and take their African slaves with them. Okay? All right, John, thanks for the call, okay?
They said it happened on the Abraham Lincoln. That's what they said later. Okay?
What would you say about Abraham Lincoln?
They said it happened during Abraham Lincoln.
Well, yeah, because Abraham Lincoln was the president during the Civil War, 1862. Lincoln was actually shot. This is the anniversary. This is the anniversary of the day Lincoln was shot in April 14th, 1865. He's going to die the following morning at 7:22 a.m. Okay, thanks for your call, John. Okay, let's quickly go to Aiden, line 3. Aiden, welcome to the African History Network show. Thanks for holding. Tell us where you're calling from.
Calling from Detroit.
Okay, go ahead with your question or comment.
Okay, I got a comment, and then I'll tell you about the latest breaking news I just heard.
Okay.
My comment is, as we look back in history and we see through slavery all the way to today.
Yes.
We wonder why we can't come together and become
a nationality of ourselves, anything. I would say this is just proof, scripture showing that we're not ready. And as far as with Nipsey Hussle,
Yes.
one of the guys that was with him that got shot in the back,
Mm-hmm.
I heard that he just got out. He did 25 years. He was just arrested a few days ago.
Well, he was the one that Nipsey was getting the clothes for.
Right.
That's why they were there. He wanted to make sure that he had some decent clothes when he gets reunited with his family.
Correct.
Mm-hmm.
And he was just arrested.
Right.
Stated he was arrested because Nipsey Hussle was still considered a gang member
Right.
in the rolling 60s.
Right.
So this is why they arrested the guy.
Right, associating with a known gang member.
Right. So
Mm-hmm.
it's like, you know, how you know, it's kind of mixed up and screwy. You know, we can see that he was changing. He was becoming a changed man.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. In the 2008,
See how our enemy do us.
right. In the 2018 interview that Nipsey did on 97.9, the Veda Loca show. It's on YouTube, March of 2018. It was, I guess it's a show out in Los Angeles area, something like that. They talked about a number of different things. He talked about being, if I remember correctly, being engaged to Lauren London, but he talked about a number of different things. He talked about his real name, but he also talked about how he stopped doing the gang banging. He stopped participating in what the gang was doing, but he did not technically leave the gang. Leave the gang. Okay, the Rolling 60s Neighborhood Crips. He was saying that you're paraphrasing. You're always still a part of it, but you don't do what they do. If you can understand that, okay. And he was talking about how when he started making the change and say, okay, look, I can't do that anymore. I can't roll with you all to do this. He said the way some of them would act toward him would change. He said they wouldn't say anything about it, but you can feel it. Okay, so people, it's on YouTube. People should go watch that interview as well.
And I believe that's why the Most High took him. I believe we're not ready. He was ready. He was showing he was ready, but I don't think we're ready.
Not ready for what?
I don't think we're ready for the level of us taking care of ourselves at this moment. I believe before that happened, if we were to have land of our own and be with ourselves,
Mm-hmm.
we would have to have a selected few, because if we try to take everyone, we would probably have civil war for 100 years before we get settled.
Who said everyone should go?
This is what I'm stating. We will have to pick and choose who will go.
Okay. All right, Aiden, thanks for calling. All right, 313-778-7600 is the call-in number if you have a question or comment. 313-778-7600. Okay, so on Thursday, April 11th, we saw many people watch across the country. I don't know the exact numbers of people who watched. I know it was probably about 20,000 there at the Staples Center. And people watched on BET. It was also live streamed on Facebook by BET and probably other social media platforms. The celebration of life for Nipsey Hussle. We saw musicians Stevie Wonder perform. We saw Anthony Hamilton as well. We saw also Janae Aiko, Marsha Ambrosius. A number of people performed. We saw Lauren London, who was there as well with their son they had together, and also Nipsey's daughter. We saw Nipsey's mother speak as well. Now she goes to the Caress Unity Center there in the Los Angeles area. They deal with African spirituality, and she talked about Carest. Okay, now Carest, they spell it K-R-S-T, but it actually comes from Ka-rest, Ka meaning spirit, rest meaning to rise, and this is from the Medu Neter, the ancient language of the ancient Egyptians, and this is where the word Christ derives from. In Greek is Christos, and then in the English you have Christ. okay, meaning anointed, but it comes from ka rest, which means the rising of the spirit. And it goes into African spirituality and African cosmology dealing with the universe as an orderly system. Okay, I don't have time to get deep into this, but also read pages 193 and 194 read pages 193 and 194 of Non-Violent Contributions to Civilization by Tony Browder. Okay, he goes into some of this information as well. So I've spoken at the Caress Unity Center. Shout out to all the brothers and sisters at the Caress Unity Center. I've spoken there twice as well, out in the LA area. I forgot the exact city it's in. Okay, all right, so we saw his mother there, who showed a lot of poise and a lot of strength. She gave us more information, more insight into Ermaeus as well. And you know, it was a really, really powerful ceremony. Check out the article. So there was a number of articles written about this. Check out the article from NBCnews.com. They had it on the NBC Black platform also. Thousands gather for emotional farewell to slain rapper Nipsey Hussle. Thousands gather for emotional farewell to slain rapper Nipsey Hussle. Okay, Stevie Wonder, Master P, and Snoop Dogg were among the guests. Also, Minister Farrakhan was there, gave a very moving speech about Nipsey as well. He spoke earlier on, and there was a fantastic letter of acknowledgement from President Barack Obama, okay, about Nipsey, honoring Nipsey's life as well. Okay, so check that out. Check out the article, and they have links to more information, and also the full letter from President Barack Obama, which was unexpected. Okay, I'm not sure if Donald Trump honored Nipsey's life at all. I don't know. Okay, but we know President Obama did. All right, we're coming up here on a break. When we come back, we're going to shift gears, and we're going to talk about Georgetown University. All right, Georgetown University students voted on Thursday, April 11th, to create a Slavery Reparations Fund. It's a fee imposed on all undergraduate students of $27.20 to benefit the descendants of 272 enslaved Africans that Georgetown College, that the Jesuit priests who ran Georgetown College back in 1838, they sold these enslaved Africans to finance Georgetown. Georgetown was in dire straits. If it had not been for that sale, there would not be a Georgetown University today. So the story came out in 2016 from the New York Times, dealing with this history. And we know that over the past few years, we've seen a number of different universities reconcile and admit their involvement in slavery, whether it's Brown University, whether it's Harvard University, Yale, etc. Okay, and some of this came after the groundbreaking article from Ta-Nehisi Coates from The Atlantic called "The Case for Reparations," which appeared in the June, which was the cover story of the June 2014 issue of The Atlantic. Okay, so New York Times had an article from April 16, 2016. 272 slaves were sold to save Georgetown. What does it owe their descendants? What does it owe their descendants? In 1838, the Jesuit priests who ran the country's top Catholic university needed money to keep it alive. Okay, now comes the task of making amends, and we see that an organization was organized, and we see that students formed an organization called GU 272, Georgetown University 272, in reference to the 272 enslaved Africans that were sold. And an excerpt from the article from the New York Times, which really broke this story, it talks about how in the fall of 1838, no one was spared. Not the 2-month-old baby and her mother, not the field hands, not the shoemaker, and not Cornelius Hawkins, who was about 13 years old when he was forced on board this ship to sell them into the Deep South. Okay, the human cargo was loaded on ships at a bustling wharf in the nation's capital, destined for the plantations of the Deep South. Deep South. Some slaves pleaded for rosaries as they were rounded up, praying for deliverance. The panic and desperation would be mostly forgotten for more than a century, but this was no ordinary slave sale. The enslaved African Americans had belonged to the nation's most prominent Jesuit priests, and they were sold along with scores of others to help secure the future of the premier Catholic institution of higher learning at the time, known today as Georgetown University. So when you see Georgetown play in the NCAA, when you see people walk around with Georgetown University jackets on, starter jackets, understand the history of Georgetown. Now with racial protests roiling college campuses and an unusual collection of Georgetown professors, students, alumni, and genealogists are trying to find out what happened to those 272 men, women, and children. And they are confronting a particularly wrenching question. What, if anything, is owed to the descendants of slaves who were sold to help ensure the college survival? When we come back from the break, we will deal with that answer. You listen to 910 AM, the Superstation, the Future Radio, the African History Network show. I'm Michael Imhotep. We'll be back in a few minutes.
The day you lose your strength.
All right, I sent you another clip, so we're going to go to that clip when I come back. This deals with Georgetown University. How's everybody doing? Stand by. We'll be back in 4 minutes. Calling numbers 313-778-7600. 313-778-7600. It's the call-in number if you have a question or comment. Howard. How you doing, Howard? Visit our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. All my DVD lectures are there. We have bundle packs where I go deep into this type of information. Also, we have the online courses that I teach as well at AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. All right, what's going on here? Okay, we'll be back in a couple of minutes here. What else we have? Howard Dixon. There will be somebody to take part. What I've written, slavery will still follow. Okay, Eric, how you doing, Eric? The biggest celebration of life ever held in the world. It was royal. I'm not sure if it was bigger than Michael Jackson's. I don't know. Michael Jackson's was at the Staples Center also. So I don't know if it's the biggest. It was very large. But I don't know if it's the biggest. Okay, you got that clip I sent you?
Yes, sir.
Clip 4? Okay. We're going to go to that. All right, guys. Let's see. Stand by here. So everybody share this broadcast on your Facebook page. We'll do some more broadcasts this week. Go back and watch the ones. I did one today also. Went more in depth into what was read into the congressional record, dealing with Representative Karen Bass as well for Nipsey Hussle. Did a broadcast yesterday as well, I think. All right. What's this? Okay, Eric, how you doing, Eric? Chandra, how you doing, Chandra? Chandra Holloway, Pierre. Many blessings, okay, in heaven. Let's see. Bonita said, I do agree that he was the beginning. I hope that the community continue what he started. Yeah, absolutely. The community has to continue what he started. Okay, Georgetown University. Then we'll go to Reparations Bill. Reparations Bill here.
$30 seconds.
All right. Okay, yes, have they heard?
10 seconds.
Welcome back to the African History Network show right here on 910 AM Superstation Feature Radio. Hey, I'm your host, Brother Michael Imhotep. It's Sunday, April 14th, 2019. You know, this month we're celebrating our 3rd year anniversary of broadcasting this show on 910 AM Superstation WFDF. Be sure to visit our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com, and you can, we have our DVD lectures there. We have a recommended reading list of books. Also, about 60 books. It connects you to our YouTube channel, Facebook pages. You can also donate to the African History Network. Click on the yellow donate button, and that helps to finance the show, finance the research, helps us stay on the air, keep doing the research, pay the bills. Or you can go to paypal.me/the AHN show, paypal.me/the AHN show. You can donate there as well, and you can also set up for a recurring donation if you want to. All right, so if you want to listen to 910 AM Superstation, there are many ways to do it. You can listen to 910 AM Superstation on Alexa, Echo Dot, all of the Amazon devices, Roku, Apple TV, and the 910 AM Superstation app that you can download from your Play Store, okay, to where you get your apps from as well. It's a free app also. Okay, so right before the break, we were talking about the story from Georgetown University. It's a story that came out Wednesday about a vote that Georgetown University students were taking, undergraduate students were taking, to impose a $27.20 fee on undergraduate students that will go towards a fund to benefit the descendants of 272 enslaved Africans that were sold by the Jesuit priests who ran Georgetown University in 1838. They were sold for $115,000. In today's dollars, that's $3.3 million. And that money helped to save Georgetown, what was called Georgetown College at the time, okay? And right before the break, I shared with you the article from the New York Times, April 16, 2016, 272 slaves were sold to save Georgetown. What does it owe their descendants? And this was 2 years after the article from Ta-Nehisi Coates in the Atlantic, the case for reparations, okay? And this is online also at Atlantic.com. You can read the full article. Now, more than a dozen universities, including Brown University, Columbia University, Harvard, and the University of Virginia, have publicly recognized their ties to slavery and the slave trade. Okay, and this is going back, this was in 2016. I think there have probably been some more who've come out since 2016. All right, now on, let's see, on Ali Velshi's show, MSNBC, on Thursday, April 12th, he did a segment dealing with this as well as reparations in general. And he dealt with the debate over slavery reparations. Georgetown University undergraduate students are urging the school to set up a fund that would benefit descendants of slaves sold by the school in the 1880s, actually 1838. Ali Velshi takes a look at how this plays into the larger debate over reparations with Robert Patterson, chair of Georgetown University's Department of African American Studies. Let's go to this clip.
Universities could soon take a major step toward addressing an historical wrong. Georgetown University undergraduate students approved a referendum to establish a fund to benefit the descendants of slaves who were sold by the school in 1838. Georgetown has formally apologized for the sale, and the fund would be paid for by a $27.20 fee charged to students each semester, and the board would donate the money to charitable causes directly benefiting the descendants. Now, since the vote was non-binding, school administrators will have to approve it. The school said in a statement, "Our students are contributing to an important national conversation, and we share their commitment to addressing Georgetown's history with slavery." The referendum, quote, "will help guide our continued engagement with students, faculty, and staff, members of the descendant community, and the Society of Jesus," which is otherwise known as the Jesuits. It has been 400 years since the first African slaves arrived in what is now the United States, and the debate over reparations for for this huge stain on American history is not new, but let's take a closer look at it. According to Merriam-Webster, reparations are the act of making amends, offering, or giving satisfaction for a wrong or injury. There have been calls for reparations since the waning days of the Civil War. Now, in January of 1865, Union General William Sherman called for some Confederate-owned lands to be separated into 40-acre parcels to be given to former slaves. That's where the term 40 acres and a mule, which is often invoked during modern discussions of reparations, originated. However, President Andrew Johnson rescinded that order and returned the land to its previous owners. In the 1890s, several black organizations lobbied Congress to provide pensions for former slaves and their children. One bill would have given $500 payments to all former slaves, plus monthly pensions ranging from $4 to $15. But this idea never made it out of committee. The issue came up again in 1969 when activist James Foreman issued his Black Manifesto and demanded $500 million from churches and synagogues for their role in perpetuating slavery before the Civil War. And there were new calls for reparations in the 1980s, which were prompted by two different movements that secured payments from the U.S. government. In 1980, the Supreme Court ordered the federal government to compensate 8 Sioux Indian tribes for the illegal seizure of tribal lands in 1877, and in 1988, Congress approved $1.25 billion in payments to 60,000 Japanese Americans who were interned in prison camps during World War II. The issue came to the forefront again in 2014 when journalist Ta-Nehisi Coates wrote an essay in The Atlantic titled "The Case for Reparations." He argued that reparations would drive a, quote, national reckoning, which would lead to a spiritual renewal. Reparations have also come up on the presidential campaign trail. Democratic candidates, Senators Elizabeth Warren and Kamala Harris, and former HUD Secretary Julian Castro have expressed their support for cash payments. And they and a number of other candidates have said that if elected, they would sign a bill called H.R. 40 into law. It would establish a commission to study how slavery and segregation still affects African Americans and how to fix it. Joining me to take a closer look at all of this is Robert Patterson, the chair of the Department of African American Studies at Georgetown University, the school that voted to establish a reparations fund, which I mentioned just a few minutes ago. Professor, good to see you. Thank you for being with us. The Georgetown issue is a microcosm, but is it an example that could be scaled across America for institutions and companies that benefited from slavery to make reparations?
Ali, good afternoon, and thank you for having me today. Yes, I mean, I think that the issue of reparations, as you outlined, and given that great historiography of the debate, really speaks to the need to translate symbolic gestures into material outcomes. And that's why I think that the students at Georgetown had the wherewithal. They're trained to be men and women for others. And I think that they really want to move from sort of these symbolic gestures, which are important, as an example, apologies, etc., to actually having something that people can quantify. I mean, the part of the, if you think about why people wanted 40 acres and a mule, it was because they had worked for free, they had made an investment. And so I think that it's important that we move from the intergenerational transfer of poverty to the intergenerational transfer of wealth. And the legacies of slavery definitely have a direct tie to some of these contemporary manifestations of poverty in African-American communities and in the black diaspora, more broadly speaking.
So Trevor Noah, on a recent edition of The Daily Show, got into a conversation, a debate, a behind-the-scenes discussion, in which someone said, how do you differentiate reparations for African-Americans who are descendants of slaves versus those for people who suffered other injustices or lost their jobs because of, industrialization? I thought his response was interesting. Let's listen together.
Right.
Reparations is a specific conversation about a specific time in America, and that is black people were slaves. You know what I mean? I've even heard people say, like, oh, but there were some of the Irish who were indentured. Like, yeah, slavery. Look at the numbers, look at the time, look at the level of work. You could not work toward your freedom. For most black people in America, this was a time when you lived and died as a slave. And so that's what reparations is about.
And the distinctions he was making is it's not compensation for something lost. It's sort of a bigger issue than that has resulted in today's wealth inequality.
Well, absolutely, and that reparations are financial investments that are directly tied to the institution of slavery and its legacies. And I think that part of what the example that was given also shows is that there are ways that, you know, certain forms of privilege or certain forms of groups that had been, or certain groups rather, that had been discriminated against, they were able to become integrated into society in ways that Jim Crow and his legacies extended slavery rather than, you know, made slavery completely obliterated.
Let me just put up an example, or certain examples of reparations. I made mention to one of them. Congress approved payments for Japanese Americans who were interned during World War II. North Carolina set up a reparations program for about 7,600 people who suffered under sterilization programs for people who were, at the time, they were called unfit. Hundreds of black men who were part of the Tuskegee syphilis experiments received payments. Florida agreed to reparations for the descendants of people who lived in the town of Rosewood, which was destroyed in a race riot in 1923, which killed at least 6 black residents. How do you convince Americans, or what's your best argument for Americans, because only 26% of those surveyed said that the U.S. should pay reparations. What's your argument in favor of why it's a good thing to do?
Right. So my suspicion is that part of it is that the legacies of the modern civil rights movement, I think people don't necessarily always understand how the legislative achievements, that there's sort of a gap between the removal of Jim Crow, for example, and the legacies that Jim Crow had already made possible. And so part of what I think we really have to do is get a more sophisticated understanding of structural racism and structural inequality. And unfortunately, a lot of our politics, a lot of our political conversation tries to push towards race neutrality, for example, in colorblindness, when we know from the evidence and from the history that still matters. And so part of what I think about reparations, if we could think of a good example of that political cartoon where two houses are on fire and people are putting water on one that is not burning, you know, and not necessarily putting water on the one that is, or even putting water on the one that is that we have to invest more into these communities and individuals that have been historically neglected, because it's not just about equality at this point. I think what reparations really get at is equity. And equity is something that's quite distinct from equality, because what equity tries to do is make up for that historical gap. And I think that the conversation around reparations draws that to our attention, that we're really not talking about giving somebody something. We're not talking about handouts. What we're talking about atoning for, in a material way, a history that contributed to the persistence of black inequality that's just structured throughout society, be it in residential segregation and mortgage fraud, educational inequality, and so forth. And so even if reparations weren't given solely to individuals, we could make the case for how institutions could also be targeted as well.
Oh, okay. That was from MSNBC Ali Velshi show from April 12, 2019, explained the debate over slavery. You can go watch that full interview at msnbc.com. And one of the things he talked about in that clip was reparations made by the U.S. government, Japanese American internment, forced sterilization in North Carolina. North Carolina was one of about 31 states that had a state-sponsored forced sterilization program, and this was part of eugenics, okay? And you had about 31 states from, I guess, about 1900 up until about the early, sometime in the 1970s. There have been a number of articles written about this as well. So North Carolina was the first state to admit it and to apologize for it and actually pay reparations so to the survivors, to those who survived their state-sponsored forced sterilization program. So this was a few years ago, and I covered this on my show as well. But I think it was about $50,000. We'll pull up an article dealing with this also, and you can research this. Victims of forced sterilization to receive $10 million compensation from North Carolina as state looks to put behind one of the darkest chapters in its history. dailymail.co.uk had an article about this, but also NBC News had an article as well dealing with this. They covered this story also. Elaine Riddick is in the story that was done by Brian Williams dealing with this, because Elaine Riddick, if you saw the documentary My Alpha 21, which came out about 2010, from Life Dynamics, and that dealt with the history of eugenics, which was created in 1883 by Francis Galton. Francis Galton was a cousin of Charles Darwin. Eugenics means good genes. Eugenics comes about after slavery ends, and it's a way to weed out genes of poor whites and poor African Americans that people deemed were feeble-minded, more prone to criminality, things like this, right? So you're going to have about 31 state-sponsored programs, state-sponsored eugenics programs in this country. abcnews.go.com has an article, North Carolina Senate denies funds for sterilization victims. So this is before the case was actually won and they paid out the reparations. On Wednesday, let's see, this article is from June 22nd, 2012. June 22nd, 2012. The North Carolina Senate rejected a plan to compensate victims of a mass sterilization plan that targeted mostly poor minorities for decades in the 20th century. When we look at eugenics, we see early on it's going to be poor whites and African Americans, but over time it's going to shift to less poor whites and more African Americans and non-white people of color. On Wednesday, Senate Republicans refused to support the measure put forth by the House of Representatives, the State House of Representatives there in North Carolina, to set aside $10 million in the state budget for compensation, which would have given victims $50,000 each. Okay, the move would have made North Carolina the first state to compensate eugenics victims. Now, from 1929 and 1974, an estimated 7,600 people were sterilized by consent, coercion, or without their knowledge as a part of the North Carolina Eugenics Board program, according to NC, North Carolina Justice for Sterilization Victims Foundation. The office estimates that up to 1,800 victims are still living and 146 have been verified so far. So when you research, and Elaine Riddick is mentioned in this article as well, when you research the story, you find out that this eventually did pass and reparations were paid out to those people, those 1,800 approximately survivors of this state-sponsored eugenics program. There were about 31 of those like that throughout the country. You also have the survivors, and we'll go to the phone lines in just a minute. Okay, so call on line one, hold the line. You had the survivors of the Tuskegee, Tuskegee syphilis experiment, the Tuskegee experiment of untreated syphilis of Negro males. That's what it was called by the U.S. Public Service Administration, which lasted 40 years, started about 1933-34. It lasted for 40 years. It was supposed to last 6 to 9 months, okay? And those survivors were paid, there was a lawsuit, those survivors were paid reparations as well. The survivors of the Rosewood Massacre of 1923 in Florida, a lawsuit is going to be filed years later, led by Arnett Doctor. Arnett Doctor was a child when the Rosewood Massacre took place. It was in January of 1923. I've done a presentation dealing with this. The movie Rosewood, which came out in 1997, if I remember correctly, from director John Singleton, dealt with this story, and Arnett Doctor was portrayed in the movie. He was a little boy. So if you remember Ving Rhames, which was a fictitious character, the character of Man that Ving Rhames played, that was a fictitious character. He was probably a composite character. He does not exist in the history of the Rosewood Massacre. But in one scene, he tells Arnett, he said, Arnett, front and center, you're my lieutenant. I need you to round up the women and the children, take care of them, etc. Things like this. So that's Arnett Doctor. Years later, Arnett is going to lead a lawsuit by the survivors of the Rosewood Massacre of 1923, and they're going to get compensation from the state of Florida. Okay, and so those who make the argument, well, you have to have a nationality, things like this, no, you don't. We have documented evidence of reparations being paid out and them not having a quote unquote nationality. Now, it can help, but you don't have to. We have evidence of this. All right. Very quickly, let's go to Larry, line one. Larry, welcome to the African History Network show. Thanks for holding. Tell us where you're calling from.
I'm calling from Sandusky, Ohio.
Sandusky, Ohio. Okay, go ahead.
Yes, sir. my question has to do with in regards to all of the major tribes or Native American tribes were in fact slave owners. Now,
when you say all of them, so just so I understand you, so according to the Federal Bureau of Indian Affairs, there are 566 federally recognized tribal nations right now. So you're talking about all 566? Are you talking about the dominant ones?
Well,
what are you referring to?
What I'm saying is that there were 5 major tribes.
Oh, yeah.
Other tribes were connected to.
Okay.
But when they did treaties, they dealt with these 5 major tribes, and whatever they came up with as far as the treaties and consent that they came up with, it was to affect the other tribes also, who were also slave owners.
What are those 5 major tribes? What are those 5 major tribes?
Well, I can't name them offhand right now. So.
Okay, go ahead.
I do know that there were 5 major tribes. But what my question and concern is that here recently I understand that compensation reparations has been paid to some of the descendants of those major tribes. Now, my concern is for the blacks that belong to those tribes who were in fact slaves of those major tribes. Why are we not asking for compensation, for reparations, for payments to those slaves that were owned by the 5 major tribes? Why aren't we asking for that? Why is it so difficult? Okay.
When you say descendants, because we're coming up on the break, we have a minute before the break. When you say descendants, are you talking about the descendants who are alive today, or are you talking about when? Well, the main reason why is because most people don't know that those treaties exist. Those are the Black Freedmen Indian Treaties of 1866, which dealt with the Choctaw, Chickasaw, Creek, Cherokee, and Seminole Indians. I've talked about this before. I talked about it last week. Most people don't know they exist. So Dr. Claude Anderson, who's one of my teachers, I've interviewed him a number of times. We've had him on the show. He's had a lawsuit against the federal government to enforce that for those descendants of those enslaved Africans by those 5 civilized tribes that will qualify for it. His group, the Harvest Institute and others, they've identified about 200,000 in the last couple of years. So about 200,000 people who will qualify for that. Most people don't know that history. This is why last week, if you listen to the show, and you can go to our YouTube channel, Michael Imhotep, Imhotep, watch last Sunday's show, I said you have to understand history and law to be able to navigate this. Most of us don't understand history and law. And that's the main reason why that's not being pursued, because I said that's low-hanging fruit. Those were treaties that some of our ancestors were in and got compensation. Those treaties are still on the books today. But if you don't know that this stuff exists and you understand law, you don't know what to fight for. Okay, we're coming up on a break. Hold the line. I'll hold you over the break to get your last comment. Okay, stand by. Listen to the African History Network show, 9:10 a.m. Superstation of Future Radio. I'm Michael Imhotep. We'll be back in a few minutes.
If you or a loved one underwent hernia surgery between...
All right, stand by, guys. We're coming back. All right, who do we have here? We have, okay. Here we have Eric. You can't come to the show without information, brother. Okay. Real life. Howard. Okay, you're back, Howard. Okay, that's good. All right. So everybody, let me put the information. Hey, if you like this type of information, you can donate to the African History Network show, paypal.me/the AHN show also. PayPal.me/the AHN show. You can also advertise with the African History Network as well. African American business owners, post the name of your business here on the thread of the broadcast. You can advertise with the African History Network. Email us at customer service at africanhistorynetwork.com. We'll take your 30-second to 60-second audio commercial, put into the audio podcast of our shows also. Okay, I got to email you another clip here. Let me see what we'll have time to get to. Okay, traumatized children. Yeah, we'll get to this stuff here. This goes into the other conversation. And then
30 seconds.
All right. And then politics nation. Okay, stand by, guys. This is live radio. This is what happens behind the scenes.
10 seconds.
Okay, all right. I just sent you that. We'll start with clip number 6.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Welcome back to the African History Network show right here on 910 AM Superstation, the Future Radio. I'm your host, Brother Michael Imhotep. It's Sunday, April 14, 2019. You know, we're celebrating the third year anniversary of me broadcasting the African History Network show right here on 910 AM, the Superstation, the Future Radio. And visit our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. All of my DVD lectures are there. We have bundle packs. We have a 14-hour, 7-session online course that I teach called Ancient Kemet, the Moors, and the Ma'afa, Understanding the Transatlantic Slave Trade, what they didn't teach you in school. Ancient Kemet, the Moors, and the Ma'afa, Understanding the Transatlantic Slave Trade, what they didn't teach you in school. It's all on demand. Kemet's one of the original names for Egypt. It's on sale right now, $40, regularly $130. Watch from around the world. Watch as many times as you want to. You can stream it. If you want to listen to 910 AM Superstation, there are many ways to do it. You can listen to 910 AM Superstation on Alexa, Echo Dot, all of the Amazon devices, Roku, Apple TV, and the 910 AM Superstation app that you can download to your smartphone, also from your app store. All right? And then also remember, at Wayne County Community College, you know somebody who is looking for employment? Coming up Tuesday, April 16, 2019, 10 a.m. to 2 p.m., Office of Career Planning and Placement presents Career Fair 2019 at the Northwest Campus of Wayne County Community College District in the Denise Wellens Glover Welcome Center, 8200 West Outer Drive, Detroit, Michigan. Bring multiple copies of resumes, meet with representatives, and explore available employment opportunities. Dress for success, free and secure parking available, business attire preferred. Open to the public at no cost. For more information, visit www.wccccd.edu, wccccd.edu, their website, or call 313-496-2775, 313-496-2775. Sister Nanette sent me this information. I met her. She actually listens to the show. I met her when I went to go see Sister Nubia Wartford do her presentation. We had Nubia Wartford here on the show a few weeks ago, who's an African-American female archaeologist, and she was dealing with some of her research in the Sudan, in the African presence there and things like this. So I met Nanette. She sent me a number of events they have coming up, so we'll announce those as well, okay? And then also, you know that the 30th Annual National NCOBRA Convention 2019 is coming up, and NCOBRA has been fighting for reparations for years, okay, for decades. 40 years of terror, a debt still owed. Timbuktu Academy of Science and Technology, located at 10800 East Canfield Street in Detroit, Michigan, 10800 East Canfield Street in Detroit, Michigan. Save the dates, Thursday, June 20th through Sunday, June 23rd, 2019. Visit their website, NCOBRA, NCOBRA, NCOBRAonline.org, NCOBRAonline.org, or call 202-643-1460, 202-643-1460. Okay, so I'll be there as well. Okay, let's quickly go back to the phone lines. Let's go back to Larry. Larry, go ahead with your last thoughts.
Yes, my only other concern or question had to do with the issue about how do we go by joining on with the lawsuit that, like you said, Dr. Claude Anderson has now
So
how do we do that? Then also, while you're actually answering that, how do we petition our congressional people in order to look into issues? I understand that Dr. Anderson is having issues with them taking up the matter in regards to reparations. Says that every time he goes to Congress, in order to speak, he can only speak to one or two. The others stay in restrooms.
Well, I'm not sure the last time he went. Yeah. Okay. Let me ask you a question. Okay. Thanks for calling, Larry. So I'm not sure the last time Dr. Claude Anderson spoke to members of Congress. The new Congress was not in. The new Congress had not been sworn in yet. They were sworn in January 3rd, 2019. I know because I talked to him about this, and I said I think some of the new Congress members for the 116th Congress would be more receptive to your message, okay? So I don't know the last time he's done that, but it wasn't with this new Congress. 1. 2, people visit harvestinstitute.org. Harvest, Harvest, harvestinstitute.org. harvestinstitute.org, which is one of his websites. That's the website for the Harvest Institute. They have information there about the Black Freedmen Indian Treaties lawsuit. There needs to be a mass movement to push this. This is low-hanging fruit. These are treaties that some of our ancestors were involved in. When you research Sarah Rector, R-E-C-T-O-R, Sarah Rector, the richest Afro-American girl in the country in the early 1900s. She and her family got land because of the Dawes Allotment Act of 1887, which is tied to the Black Freedmen Indian Treaties of 1866. Okay, and her family were of enslaved Creek Indian ancestry in where? Oklahoma. There's a history behind this. So when I teach about the history of Black Wall Street in Tulsa, Oklahoma, I go back hundreds of years and I deal with this history. This history ties into the history of Black Wall Street, ties to the history of Oklahoma as well. Okay, so there's a precedence for this. This is low-hanging fruit. These are treaties still on the books. Our ancestors were pushed out of these treaties illegally in 1941 when the U.S. government conspired with the 5 civilized tribes of Native Americans, the Choctaw, Chickasaw, Creek, Cherokee, and Seminole Indians, to redefine what a Native American is, and it stipulated that you had to have 1/4 or 1 quantum Native American blood, but the previous treaties did not state that. Okay, so research that history also, and it was an article Dr. Claude Anderson had at his website as well. I got to check with them, see if they still have that article up. If not, I have a copy of it. I'll send it to his wife so she can get it back up. It gives background information. He also has a DVD lecture he's done, because I ordered his lecture bundle pack as well a couple of years ago. He has a DVD lecture at his website, powernomics.com, that goes deep into this history. Okay. All right. This is why I explain to people, you need to understand history and law if you want to deal with reparations. You need to understand history and law. Unfortunately, too many of our people don't understand this. Also ties into Article 1, Section 9 of the U.S. Constitution. Go watch last week's show, because I went deep into this, the show from April 7th. Okay, I went deep into that history. I talked about the article from that Dr. Jahi Issa and brother Reggie Marbury, Reggie Marbury wrote in 2017, called Reparations is Dead. Here's how to revive it, or something like that. And it goes into some of the history, goes into legal arguments for reparations, tied into when Congress outlawed the transatlantic slave trade, the international slave trade of African people. The U.S. Congress outlawed that. They passed the bill March 2nd, 1807. It went into effect January 1st, 1808, based upon a 20-year clause stipulation in Article 1, Section 9 of the U.S. Constitution. All this ties into the U.S. Constitution. Okay? If you don't understand the Constitution, you're going to be making moral arguments for reparations and not legal arguments, and you're not going to be prepared for legal challenges dealing with reparations as well. Okay. All right. So let's continue here. So we talked about Georgetown University. If we look at the article from abcnews.go.com, abcnews.go.com, the official website of ABC News, they had an article from April 12, 2019, Thursday. Georgetown students vote overwhelming in favor of $27 fee for slavery reparations. Okay. And he talked about how by a 2-to-1 margin, students approved the measure, which still must be approved by the university to go into effect. Matt Hill, the university's media relations manager, told ABC News in a statement, quote, student referendums help to express important student perspectives, but do not create university policy and are not binding, end quote. Okay. Now, the school's undergraduates voted Thursday on the referendum, which would increase tuition by $27.20 per semester to create a fund benefiting descendants of the 272 slaves sold to pay off the Georgetown College's Jesuits' debt, a move that saved the university financially. Sophomore Melisande Short Colomb, C-O-L-O-M-B, a Georgetown student, said at a town hall meeting last week, the previous week, quote, the Jesuits sold my family and 40 other families so you could be here. Okay, she's one of 4 students currently attending the university under an admissions policy that considers the descendants of the 272 slaves as legacy students, which means they get preferential admission to the college. Just like if your parent graduated from Georgetown or your grandparent graduated from Georgetown, you would get preferential admission consideration. Okay, that group also includes Elizabeth Thomas, who will receive her master's degree from Georgetown University in May and is a desk assistant at ABC News in Washington. She's a descendant of Sam and Betsy Harris, who were enslaved and sold by Georgetown University in 1838. If the current referendum passes, it's unclear whether Elizabeth Thomas would receive any reparations in the future. Okay. All right. So check out this article in its entirety. I did 2 broadcasts this past week dealing with this also. Michael Imhotep, Imhotep, on YouTube, and the African History Network on Facebook. Click on videos there. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel and Facebook. Turn on the notifications as well on YouTube. Click on the bell so you're notified when we upload new videos or go live. Turn on notifications on our fan page, the African History Network also. Okay, so this ties into what's going on at Georgetown University, ties into a larger discussion dealing with reparations, as we heard in the clip from MSNBC from Ali Velshi, okay, Thursday, April 12th. Now, if we go and look at H.R. 40, which was reintroduced by Representative Sheila Jackson Lee, representative from Texas, January 3rd, 2019. This is in the House of Representatives. TheHill.com has an article dealing with this from April 4th, 2019. I didn't have time to get to it last week because we had so many calls. Reparations Bill wins new momentum in Congress. Reparations Bill wins new momentum in Congress. Now, House legislation to form a commission to study whether African Americans should receive reparations for slavery is getting a significant boost from Democrats on the presidential campaign trail. Representative Karen Bass, the head of the Congressional Black Caucus, CBC, suggested that action on a reparations measure sponsored by Representative Sheila Jackson Lee is all but certain, with Democrats now in control of the lower chamber and the idea gaining prominence on the national stage. Okay, Jackson Lee's bill would form a commission to study the issue of reparations, but does not call for African Americans to receive payments. Okay, it's do the study first, then get to that later. But first, they want to do the study. The reason why is, one of the reasons why is because it's going to be the House of Representatives that has to vote on this. So you want to do the investigation, gather the evidence, just like any of the other commissions that they have in the House of Representatives. When they pass bills, the bills are not just things they pull out of the air. It's based upon evidence. It's based upon studies. It's based upon investigations. It's coming from committees. It's debated. They have hearings to debate this in the House, etc. Watch C-SPAN. You can see all this take place. Quote, I don't think there needs to be pressure. We're in charge, said Representative Bass, who also introduced into the congressional record the legacy of Nipsey Hussle this past Wednesday. It's being discussed. I'm sure we're going to get there. Now, 2020 hopefuls, including Senator Cory Booker and Elizabeth Warren, are backing the legislation. Representative Tulsi Gabbard, Democrat of Hawaii, also presidential candidate, is a co-sponsor, okay, of the bill. And also Representative Beto O'Rourke endorsed the idea at the National Action Network Committee National Convention, a pivot from his earlier statement of opposition to reparations payments. Beto O'Rourke said, quote, absolutely, I would sign that into law. Okay, now the support from presidential candidates highlights how the idea of reparations is spiking in popularity in Democratic circles, particularly as a large field of candidates jockey for support from African American voters. Former Representative John Conyers of Detroit, 13th Congressional District, for 50 years had introduced a reparations bill in Congress since 1989, but the legislation was given little notice, even with the nation's first African American president, Barack Obama, in office. Now, Jackson Lee, now you had steady pushing on this. I dealt with this, go watch the broadcast I did this past week because I had more time to get into this. You had, back in about 2015, you had 14 Caribbean nations sue Britain for reparations. You had the landmark article from Ta-Nehisi Coates for The Atlantic as well. The Case for Reparations, which really laid out this history. I think it's about a 17-page article this brother did. He won awards for this also. So you've had constant pushing on this. You've had universities, Brown University, Harvard, Yale, other universities that have come out and admitted their connections to slavery, etc. 2016, you had the article from New York Times that talked about Georgetown University's push to reconcile with that history and make amends, etc. So you've had these things happening constantly. Okay, 2016 presidential election, reparations came up as well with Bernie Sanders and Hillary Clinton. Now, it didn't come up, I don't think, with Donald Trump. Okay, if there had been more Democratic candidates in 2016 as opposed to 3, and really only 2 main ones, and the third one was O'Malley, who was the former governor of Maryland, but his campaign didn't go anywhere. If you had more candidates, you would have had more people talking about it then. But there were articles written about it then, I know, because I covered it on my show when it took place in 2016. This is how I know this. Okay, now you got some people that's jumped into the reparations movement, haven't studied the history, and they don't know it came up in 2016. So I'm not sure where they're getting the information from, but you may want to go Google that. Okay, now, so Representative Sheila Jackson Lee, who took up the mantle from John Conyers, said she's been talking with House Judiciary Committee Chairman Jerry Nadler, Democrat from New York, about holding a hearing on her bill, and this would be a hearing in the House Judiciary Committee. Representative Nadler is also a co-sponsor, and Speaker Nancy Pelosi, Democrat from California, has put her considerable voice behind the bill as well, behind the effort also. An aide said on Wednesday that if acted upon, the bill would move first through Representative Jerry Nadler's committee, the House Judiciary Committee, before reaching the floor, the House Representative floor. Quote, "We tried to posture this legislation at the highest level of thought and seriousness. There is no humor, there is no request in the bill for a check or a pot of gold," end quote, said Representative Sheila Jackson Lee, as she told thehill.com as she headed to a CBC meeting in the nation's capital. Quote, I do think it has traction. People are not hesitating to openly support it and push for it. I think we have a very good chance of having a hearing at some point, end quote. Check out the rest of the article, okay? There's 2 other pages. I don't have time to get through all this. I dealt with it in my broadcast this week. And we also have them on audio podcast format. Go to AfricanHistoryNetwork.com, click on Listen to Podcasts, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com, click on the Listen to Podcasts. We're on 8 different podcast platforms: Blog Talk Radio, iTunes, Castbox, Acast, FM Player, TuneIn. So check us out there wherever you get your podcasts from. We're on Stitcher also, because we're back on Stitcher. We got back on Stitcher 2 or 3 months ago. We're on Stitcher as well. Wherever you get your podcast from, search for the African History Network Show. Email us at customerservice@AfricanHistoryNetwork.com, customerservice@AfricanHistoryNetwork.com if you want to advertise with the African History Network. Now, Representative Cory Booker this past Tuesday introduced his bill in the U.S. Senate to study reparations. It's not getting a whole lot of support from Republicans in the U.S. Senate. Imagine that. Okay. See, this is what I'm trying to explain to people. You have to understand strategy. You understand how many white people in the U.S. Senate have to vote for this? You're going to need 60 votes out of the Senate. There are only 46 Democrats plus 2 independents in the Senate. Now, Democrats may take back control of the U.S. Senate in 2020, and I hope they do. They need to. Don't know if they're going to get 60 seats in the Senate. But you're going to most likely need some Republicans to vote for this. And I don't think the one black Tea Party Republican, Tim Scott of South Carolina, is going to vote for it either. In South Carolina is where the Civil War started. We know this past, I posted the article in one of my broadcasts I did April 12th. I talked about it this past week. April 12th was the anniversary of the beginning of the Civil War at Fort Sumter in South Carolina, April 12th, 1861. We know today is the anniversary of Abraham Lincoln being shot, April 14th, okay, at the Ford Theater, April 14th, 1865, and he dies the following morning at 7:22 a.m., okay? Now, TheHill.com has an article from April 11th, 2019. GOP senators dismiss Booker reparations proposal. GOP senators dismiss Booker reparations proposal. GOP senators, including members of the Senate Judiciary Committee, have little interest in Senator Cory Booker's proposal to study awarding reparations to descendants of slaves. Now, they don't even want to study it. We're not talking about a payment. They don't even want to study it, okay? This is why some of these ignorant-ass Republicans have to be voted out of office. Quote, I think it's too remote in time. I think it's too divisive, said Judiciary Committee Chairman Senator Lindsey Graham, who's now best buddies with Donald Trump. See, before he was talking about how crazy Donald Trump was, things like this. Now he's a sycophant of Donald Trump, one of his lackeys. Senator Lindsey Graham, Republican from South Carolina, where the Civil War started, told reporters this week the panel would be tasked with marking up the bill, which Senator Cory Booker introduced earlier this week. Quote, I don't think anybody, black or white, man or woman, whatever your nationality is, responsible for what somebody else did, somebody else, black or white, did 150 years ago. Now, did he say anything about the Japanese Americans being paid reparations in internment? Did he talk about forced sterilization in North Carolina? Did he talk about all this other stuff? Native Americans being paid. You heard the clip from Ali Velshi. Native Americans being paid in 1980. But also, if we go and we look at the stimulus bill from 2010, in the stimulus bill, there was almost $200 million in reparations paid to Filipino Americans because of World War II. That was in the stimulus bill. Go research that also. Okay, so did Senator Lindsey Graham come out in opposition to all of this? I find it interesting that they don't talk about the massive land redistribution that took place and all these policies that were put in place to maldistribute wealth, power, and resources into the hands of the dominant white society. I mean, this is a guy who represents the state where the Civil War started. April 12th, 1861. This is a guy that comes from the state where the Civil War started. Okay, then you had one of my favorite Southern senators, Senator John Kennedy, Republican from Louisiana. He said, I don't think anybody black, so that was Senator John Kennedy who said that. I don't think anybody, black or white, man or woman, whatever your nationality, is responsible for what somebody else did, somebody else, black or white, did 150 years ago. Okay, but he didn't talk about how this impacts the maldistribution of wealth today, where you have the average white family has $171,000 worth of wealth compared to $17,000 for the average African American family. He doesn't talk about how it was government policy that created the redlining. It was government policy that dealt with that created the GI Bill that discriminated against African Americans getting funding for college, discriminated against African Americans also getting loans for housing. Okay, and we go and we look at the Federal Housing Act of 1947 that allowed white people to put 3% down on low interest loans and get houses built out in the newly formed suburbs. And when African Americans try to take advantage of these loans, we were discriminated against. When we try to use those loans to buy property in the inner city, we were told these were high-risk areas we were discriminated against as well, and you have a deindustrialization of the inner city. You have the U.S. Interstate Highway Acts in 1952 and 56 that the auto industry lobbied for. This is all government policy, okay? The U.S. Interstate Highway Acts that drive 41,000 miles of U.S. interstate highway all throughout the country, and it runs through about 1,600 African-American communities. Read the book, How White Folks Got So Rich, The Untold Story of American White Supremacy. How White Folks Got So Rich, The Untold Story of American White Supremacy. Now, Senator Tim Scott, Black Tea Party Republican from South Carolina also, the first Southern African-American senator elected since Reconstruction, also said he didn't support the idea, citing comments from House Majority Whip James Clyburn, Democrat from South Carolina in the House of Representatives, the top-ranking African-American in Congress, who told the Charleston Post and Courier, quote, I think pure reparations would be impossible to implement, end quote. Well, maybe we're talking about a combination. But first, we're talking about a study. Now, what did Tim Scott say when Republicans had 33 hearings on Benghazi and found nothing? What did he say then? See, and keep in mind, Tim Scott is African American, but he did not join the Congressional Black Caucus. You have 3 senators of African descent in the U.S. Senate. Tim Scott, Republican from South Carolina. Cory Booker, Democrat from New Jersey. Kamala Harris, Democrat from California. Tim Scott did not join the Congressional Black Caucus. I wonder why. quote, essentially a conversation about reparations is just something that's not even a realistic possibility. So it's something I don't think we spend any time conversing, Tim Scott told the Huffington Post. Scott has occasionally defied his Republican colleagues on racial issues, opposing the nomination of judicial nominee Thomas Farr earlier this year over concerns about his positions on voting rights. Okay. All right. So check out the rest of this article. Follow this story. Stay tuned for this. Okay. So we got to shift gears here. I want to squeeze in this last story here. And let's see here. What are we going to do? Okay. Let's go quickly to this story dealing with the bikers, because we forgot this, okay? And what I'm going to do, I'm going to give you the name of these articles. I want to get to, let's go to politics. Let's go to the clip. Let's go to clip 9 from Politics Nation. I'm going to skip over these other clips. Let's go to clip 9 from Politics Nation, because this is important for people to hear this. We're going to go to that in just a minute. Let me know when you have it ready, okay? We'll go to that, Mike. Okay, hate crimes in the Trump era. Reverend Al Sharpton with Frank Figliuzzi and Kristen Clark about the recent rise of hate crimes towards people of color and how Trump's rhetoric has directly influenced it. Let's go to this clip.
Logical rhetoric that originates in the United States is now used to inspire terror worldwide. Unfortunately, in a time when decisive leadership is needed, the president's rhetoric fans the flames with language that, whether intentional or not, may motivate and embolden white supremacist movements. We only need to look at the perpetrators of violence and hate to see the impact this rhetoric has had.
If there has been one constructive thing to come out of the Trump era, it's the current focus on white supremacy as a national and global security threat, as racist violence from Kentucky to Christchurch, New Zealand, seems to have galvanized everyone but the Republican Party. And our commander-in-chief, who continues to deny the threat despite warnings from the highest level of law enforcement, recently downgrading the federal response to domestic terror while continuing to push for a racist border wall that would not have stopped a young woman from being run over and killed by neo-Nazis in Virginia in 2017. Those 12 Jewish worshipers from being shot to death by a racist in Pittsburgh last year. Or most recently, those 3 black churches in Louisiana that authorities suspect were burned down by the white son of a local sheriff's deputy. In other words, folks, the enemy is already here and getting help from the top. Joining me now is Frank Figliuzzi, former FBI Assistant Director for Counterintelligence and now a National Security Analyst for MSNBC, and Kristen Clark, President of the Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights Under the Law. Frank, let me go to you first. They have recently downgraded domestic terrorism, and when you look at the attacks, 3 black churches in Louisiana, the 11 members of the Jewish community and Jewish faith killed in the synagogue, if that's not terrorism, what is? And any number of those statistics released show there's an increase in hate crime. How does this administration justify downgrading domestic terrorism in our intelligence department?
Well, I can tell you it's certainly not justifiable on any data set that we're aware of, so we have to look to other motivations on this downgrade. You're right, the FBI has noted a 17% increase in hate crime just in the 1 year between 2016 and 2017. So the administration's going in the opposite direction of the facts, and even more so, Rev, we've got to make a comparison here to radical extremist radicalization online and compare that to what the president is saying verbally, what he's messaging through his administration. And I see, having worked terrorism during my career, I see an analogy here between radical online radicalization in the Islamic movement and what we're seeing domestically and even globally. So the church burnings in Louisiana raise a question for all of us, which is, does the FBI have the tools and resources it needs for domestic terrorism? And I'm here to tell you, legislation does not yet equip the FBI appropriately. If you want to continue the comparison with international terrorist groups, we don't have an analogous domestic terrorism law that allows the FBI to say, you're advocating violence on a domestic level, and we need to treat you like a terrorist organization.
Christian, look at some numbers. We've seen a 30% rise in the number of hate groups since President Trump took office. That's from the Southern Poverty Law Center. And we've seen a 50% spike in the number of white nationalist groups in little over the last year. And in the 17 years since the 9/11 attack, domestic extremism has killed more Americans here at home than Islamic terror, by a factor of nearly 4 to 1. Yet we're seeing the downgrading of looking into these matters. You testified this week before the House Judiciary Committee. What was the crux of what you were trying to say and how you were dealing with a lot of this messaging online?
Well, first of all, I'm glad that Congress is bringing attention to and shining a light on the crisis that we face in the country right now. No doubt hate crimes are on the rise, and we are seeing white nationalist groups proliferating all across the country because they are most certainly emboldened by the words, the rhetoric, and actions that they're seeing from the very top, from this White House and from this administration. We have seen the president use racial expletives to refer to people from African and Caribbean countries. There's the Muslim ban, and there are policies that really take aim at black and brown people in a very intentional way. And what I sought to explain to Congress is that
we got to pause it right there. We're running out of time. She told Congress they need to step up. We're running out of time. Go to the clip, MSNBC.com, Politics Nation. Hate crimes in the Trump era. Hate crimes in the Trump era. April 13th, 2019. Okay. Also, little Candace Owens testified there. She was asked to come by Republicans who are trying to say, hey, there's no problem with white nationalism and white supremacy, all this stuff. News1.com called her out, blasted her as she needs to be blasted. 5 times Candace Owens lied to Congress while testifying about white nationalism. 5 times Candace Owens lied to Congress while testifying about white nationalism. We'll deal with this, talk about this some more next week. Read the article from NBCnews.com. Waco biker shooting. Prosecutors drop all charges in deadly shootout. Waco biker shooting. Prosecutors drop all charges in deadly shootout. The shooting outside a Twin Peaks restaurant in Waco, Texas on May 17, 2015 involved rival biker gangs, the Bandidos, and Cossacks. Okay? No one will be convicted or otherwise held accountable for the 2015 shootout between rival biker gangs in Waco, in a Waco, Texas restaurant parking lot that left 9 people dead and at least 20 injured, prosecutors in Central Texas said on Tuesday. And this article is from April 3rd, 2019. I'll probably do a separate broadcast dealing with this. In a statement announcing all charges will be dropped in the deadliest biker gang shooting in U.S. history, McLennan County District Attorney Barry Johnson said any further effort to prosecute the case would be a waste of time, effort, and resources. Imagine that. What do you think would happen if they were all African American? There's about 400 people out there fighting, shooting, cussing, stabbing. What do you think would have happened if those were black? If they were all African American? What do you think would happen? Okay? All right. Visit our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. Hey, we have the 8 DVD bundle pack, The Africans That Were Here Before Columbus. The Africans That Were Here Before Columbus includes a double lecture I've done with Dr. David Imhotep, who wrote the book, The First Americans Were Africans, Documented Evidence. Includes a lecture by Dr. Ivan Van Sertima, who came before Columbus. Also one from Dr. John Henry Clark, who wrote Christopher Columbus and the African Holocaust. That's at AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. It's on sale right now, $50. It's an 8 DVD bundle pack. All right, you can donate to the African History Network, paypal.me/the AHN Show, paypal.me/the AHN Show. Lastly, be sure to read the article from February 20th, 2019, New York Times. Over 1,000 hate groups are now active in the United States, Civil Rights Group says. Over 1,000 hate groups are now active in the United States, Civil Rights Group says. And we'll be doing some more broadcasts this week. Thanks for listening to the African History Network Show, 9:10 a.m. Superstation and Future Radio. Stay tuned for Pastor Mo and Michael Imhotep. Right now, it's correct wrong behavior. It's not over till we win. Wakanda forever. We'll talk to you next week. Peace.
You're smart. You're funny.
All right, guys, we got to get out of here.
I think you're confused.
Talk to y'all later. All right, peace.